Tennessee's relocation industry would pay actual money to bury this video because 12 towns in the state got measurably more expensive in 2026, and number 2 is a place you'd never expect. And I want to be precise about what this list is, because it is not the usual one. Nothing here is about a town being poor or rough or unpleasant. Every single entry is about money that changed this year. Tennessee homeowners now pay an average of $3,408 a year for home insurance, the 7th highest in the country, about 42% above the national average, and that number landed in June of 2026 alongside a wave of new carrier filings. On top of that, a specific set of counties reappraised property this spring for the first time in 4 to 6 years. So I drove 12 towns where 2026 changed the arithmetic, and I found an assessor who used the word sticker shock, a county whose values are now locked until 2028, a tax rate raised on top of a reappraisal, and 13 rural hospitals already flagged as at immediate risk. If you're house hunting in Tennessee right now, hit that subscribe button before we start, because we're counting all 12 down, and you do not want to miss number 1. Let's count it down. Number 12, Watertown, Tennessee. When I first drove into Watertown, I found one of the best preserved small squares in Middle Tennessee, out in eastern Wilson County, where the growth hasn't fully arrived yet. Here's what changed this year. Wilson County completed a reappraisal in 2026, the first since 2021. Every property in the county was revalued to current market, and Wilson has been one of the fastest growing counties in the state over exactly that window. 5 years of the hottest market in decades applied to your house in one letter, and understand what that letter is and isn't. It shows an old value and a new value, and the gap between them is frequently enormous, but it is not a bill. The bill comes later, after the county sets its rate. That gap between the scary notice in spring and the actual bill in autumn is where most people either panic for no reason or relax when they shouldn't. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Watertown. The Tennessee Central Railway runs excursion trains out here from Nashville, and on those weekends a town of about 1,500 people fills up with visitors who came by rail, the way people arrived a century ago. Here's your takeaway. Find out what year your county last reappraised before you make an offer. If the answer is 5 years ago and prices ran hard in that window, you are buying just ahead of a very large envelope. Number 11, Eagleville, Tennessee. When I first drove into Eagleville, I was in the far corner of Rutherford County, in the last genuinely rural pocket of a county that is otherwise filling in fast. Rutherford reappraises every 4 years, and 2026 is one of them. The last was 2022. That matters more here than almost anywhere because Rutherford County has absorbed enormous growth since 2022. When a county revalues after 4 years of that, the increases are not gentle. And there's a wrinkle specific to a place like Eagleville that people miss. In a county where most of the growth landed elsewhere, a rural pocket can be revalued upward by the same market forces without receiving any of the services that growth paid for. You get the subdivision's assessment increase and the county's 2-lane road. Same county. 2 very different deals. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Eagleville. This is one of the smallest incorporated cities in one of Tennessee's largest counties by population, and it has held onto its own identity while everything around it turned into subdivisions. Here's your takeaway. Fast-growing counties reappraise on shorter cycles, every 4 years instead of 6. That's not a small distinction. It means the market catches up to your tax bill faster. Number 10, Farragut, Tennessee. When I first drove into Farragut, I understood why retirees like it. Well-run, west of Knoxville, good services, and genuinely pleasant. Knox County completed its countywide reappraisal in 2026, with notices mailed to property owners in April. And here's the part that matters. Those values now hold until the next reappraisal in 2028. So whatever number came in that April envelope is your number for 2 years, which cuts both ways. If your value came in high, you're carrying it. If you disagreed with it, the appeal window was this spring, and it has closed. That's the part that catches buyers rather than owners. An existing owner got the notice, had the chance to walk the assessor through the cracked foundation or the roof that needs replacing, and could argue the number down. You, arriving in August, inherit whatever they accepted, and you had no seat at that table. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Farragut. This town is named for David Farragut, the first admiral in the United States Navy, the man who said damn the torpedoes at Mobile Bay. He was born just a few miles from here. Here's your takeaway. Buying in a reappraisal year means you inherit the new value without ever having had the right to appeal it. Ask the seller what the reappraisal notice said, and ask whether they appealed. Number 9. Surgoinsville, Tennessee. When I first drove into Surgoinsville, I was in Hawkins County on the Holston River in one of the oldest settled corners of this state. Hawkins County's reappraisal notices went out on April 23rd of this year, mailed on the county's behalf by the state. And a county official said the thing out loud that I want you to hear. People see the value double on the notice and assume the tax bill doubles. It doesn't work that way, but it also doesn't leave everyone unaffected, and I'll explain exactly how in a few minutes. The short version, so you're not waiting on it. The county lowers its rate to offset the higher values overall. Whether you personally come out ahead depends entirely on how your house moved compared to the county average. Above average and you pay more. Below average and you may actually pay less. The average is the pivot. Everything turns on which side of it you land. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Surgoinsville. This is one of the oldest towns in Tennessee, laid out in the early 1800s along the Holston, on ground that was settled before this was a state. Here's your takeaway. If you're buying in a county that just reappraised, get the new assessment in writing before closing. Not the old tax bill, the new notice. Number 8. Roan Mountain, Tennessee. When I first drove up to Roan Mountain, I was in Carter County at real elevation, in some of the most beautiful country in the eastern United States. Carter County reappraised in 2026. The previous one was 2021, a full 5-year gap covering the single steepest run-up in Tennessee housing prices in living memory. And the county's own assessor put it plainly before the notices went out. He said property owners should expect an increase, that this reappraisal and others across the state would show a large jump in value, and he used the phrase sticker shock. That's not me editorializing, that's the assessor. And the 5-year gap is what makes Carter County's version harsh. A county on a 4-year cycle catches the market twice during a boom and spreads the adjustment. A county on a 6-year cycle absorbs the whole run in a single revaluation. Same market, same houses, very different envelopes, decided by nothing more than which schedule the county happens to be on. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Roan Mountain. The bald up here holds what's regarded as the largest natural rhododendron garden in the world, 600 acres that turn purple every June on a mountaintop, with no one having planted any of it. Here's your takeaway. When the official responsible for the numbers warns you in advance, believe him. Budget for the increase rather than hoping you're the exception. Number 7. Goodlettsville, Tennessee. When I first drove into Goodlettsville, I was on the Davidson and Sumner County line north of Nashville, in a town that has always been the affordable side of the metro. And this is where I explain the mechanism because Davidson County is the clearest example of it. Here's how it works. After a reappraisal, state law requires a certified tax rate. The rate is mathematically lowered so the county collects roughly the same total revenue. That's the truth in taxation law, and it means a reappraisal by itself is close to revenue neutral. But there are 2 escapes. First, if your property rose more than the county average, your bill goes up even at the certified rate. Second, the governing body can vote to exceed the certified rate after a public hearing. And in Davidson County, rate decisions by the mayor and council had a significant effect on tax bills across the county. The reappraisal is neutral. The vote afterward is not. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Goodlettsville. Mansker Station, a reconstructed 1779 frontier fort, sits right here, from the years when this was the far edge of the American frontier. Here's your takeaway. Attend, or at least read about, the certified tax rate hearing in the county you're buying into. It happens in summer. Almost nobody goes, and it decides your bill. If you're learning things about this year that nobody's mentioning, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people running the same numbers. Number 6. Dunlap, Tennessee. When I first drove into Dunlap, I was in the Sequatchie Valley, in a place that is beautiful, affordable, and squarely inside the problem I'm about to describe. Here's the 2026 development. Analysis published last year identified 13 Tennessee rural hospitals as already at immediate risk of closure, before the most recent round of federal Medicaid changes, which analysts expect to accelerate the trend. 13. Already at immediate risk. In a state that has led the nation in rural closures per capita. I'm not telling you Dunlap's hospital is closing. I'm telling you that if you buy anywhere rural in Tennessee in 2026, you are buying into a healthcare system that a lot of serious people expect to contract further. And that risk compounds in a direction people don't think about. When one rural hospital closes, the patients don't vanish. They arrive at the next hospital over, which was already running thin. So a closure 40 miles away lengthens your wait at a facility that never closed at all. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Dunlap. There's a park here preserving hundreds of restored beehive coke ovens, brick domes from the coal era, standing in rows in the woods, from when this valley fed the iron furnaces. Here's your takeaway. Ask the local hospital's administration one direct question. What's your operating margin, and have you cut any service lines in the last 2 years? They may not answer. The refusal is also an answer. Number 5, Morristown, Tennessee. When I first drove into Morristown, I found the most unusual downtown in Tennessee and a good regional hospital in Hamblin County in the Northeast. The 2026 issue here is insurance, and it's the one nobody sees coming. Tennessee homeowners insurance has been climbing 8 to 15% a year for 3 years, with the steepest increases landing in storm-exposed parts of Middle and West Tennessee. Industry guidance for 2026 puts expected increases at 6 to 10%, and that assumes a clean profile, no claims, and no changes to your roof. Your premium goes up because of what happened to other people in other counties last year. That's how property insurance works, and it's worth understanding before it surprises you. Carriers price by region, not by house. A severe storm season across Middle and West Tennessee gets absorbed into filings that apply statewide, so a spotless record in a quiet county buys you far less protection from an increase than most people assume. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Morristown. This town has elevated sidewalks, a second-story walkway system built over the downtown streets in the 1960s. There's nothing quite like it anywhere else in the country. Here's your takeaway. Get an actual insurance quote on the specific address before you make an offer, not an estimate. A quote from an independent agent who shops more than one carrier. Number 4, Clinton, Tennessee. When I first drove into Clinton, I was in Anderson County on the Clinch River, in a town with more history than its size suggests. And here's the 2026 warning specific to any Tennessee county, using Clinton as the example. Remember that certified tax rate, the mechanism that's supposed to keep a reappraisal revenue neutral? It can be exceeded. State law says the governing body simply has to advertise its intent in a newspaper of general circulation and hold a public hearing. A notice in a newspaper in 2026. That is the entire procedural protection standing between you and a higher rate, and it was designed in an era when people read the local paper. If you are new to a county, you will not see that notice, and you will not know a hearing happened until the bill arrives in October. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Clinton. In 1956, Clinton High School became the first state-supported public high school in the South to desegregate. The 12 students who walked in that year are remembered here as the Clinton 12. Here's the takeaway. Subscribe to the county's local paper before you move, not after. It is the only place some of these notices legally have to appear. Number 3, Alcoa, Tennessee. When I first drove into Alcoa, I was in Blount County at the foot of the Smokies, in a town that has been discovered thoroughly and priced accordingly. 2 things stack here in 2026. Blount County has absorbed serious growth, which means real price appreciation feeding into assessment. And electricity across the state runs through TVA, which has raised base rates in recent cycles to fund a very large construction program. Tennessee Power is still cheap, well below the national average, and I want to be fair about that. But it is a federal utility with no competitor and no state regulator, and the rate is set by a board. Cheap and entirely outside your control. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Alcoa. This town exists because the Aluminum Company of America built it in 1919 as a company town for its smelting operation, and the city is literally named after the company's initials. Here's the takeaway. When you budget utilities for a Tennessee retirement, don't use today's rate flat for 20 years. Build in 2 to 3% annual growth. Over 2 decades, that's a meaningful number. Number 2, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. When I first drove into Pigeon Forge, I saw the same thing everybody sees, and then I looked at what happened to the housing. Sevier County's residential stock has been converting to short-term rental at scale. Neighborhoods have petitioned the county to limit it. New resort projects keep breaking ground with dozens of rental units attached, and county officials have estimated that 20 to 25 tons of garbage a day from short-term rentals is being dumped into convenience centers built for residents, enough to force early closures. 25 tons a day in the residence bins. For a retiree in 2026, that means you're bidding against investors, not neighbors. Investors underwrite on nightly revenue, which supports a price no retiree on a fixed income can match. Now, here's the wildcard fact about Pigeon Forge. The town is named for an actual iron forge that operated on the Little Pigeon River in the 1800s, and the river was named for the passenger pigeons that once darkened the sky over it, a bird now extinct. Here's the takeaway. Before buying in any tourism county, ask what share of residential permits went to short-term rentals last year. If the number is high, you're shopping in a commercial market wearing a residential label. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who does their homework before they buy. So, do yourself a favor and hit that like button. Number 1. Loudon, Tennessee. When I first drove into Loudon, I understood immediately why it's number 1, and it isn't because anything is wrong with the town. Loudon County sits on the Tennessee River between Knoxville and Chattanooga, with lakes, mountains, and a reputation as one of the premier retirement destinations in this state. That reputation is exactly the problem in 2026, because everything on this list stacks here at once. This county has been marketed to retirees harder than almost anywhere in Tennessee, which brought a decade of out-of-state buyers paying out-of-state prices. That appreciation feeds assessments. The insurance increases hitting the whole state hit here too. The lake-adjacent housing that drew people is the housing that appreciated most, and you'd be arriving after all of it, paying today's price for a place people bought a decade ago for a third of it. You get the destination. You don't get the discount that made it a destination. And I want to be very clear because I've recommended places like this before, and I stand by that. Loudon is genuinely a good place to retire. It has real medical access, a beautiful setting, and a functioning community full of people who did this successfully. But the version of it that made those people's retirement work, cheap water-adjacent housing in an undiscovered county, is not the version available to you in 2026. What's available now is a mature, well-known retirement market at mature, well-known prices. Now here's the wildcard fact about this stretch of the river. Fort Loudon, built in 1756, was among the first British fortifications ever constructed west of the Appalachian Mountains, an outpost so remote at the time that supplying it took months, and its garrison eventually surrendered because nothing could reach them. 270 years later, it's a retirement corridor, and of everything on this list, it's the one I'd most want you to run the numbers on yourself before you fall in love with it. Every town here is a real place, and I'll say again what I said at the start, not one of them made this list for being bad. They made it for what changed in 2026. And here's the pattern underneath all 12. Nothing on this list is about the purchase price. It's about the carrying cost, the tax bill after a reappraisal, the insurance renewal, the utility rate, the vote at a hearing you didn't attend. Those numbers move every year for as long as you own the house, and they move without asking you. You negotiate the price once. You pay the carrying cost forever. So do these 5 things before you sign anything this year. Ask what year the county last reappraised. Get the new assessment notice, not the old tax bill. Get a real insurance quote on that exact address. Read the certified tax rate hearing notice, and ask the local hospital what it has cut recently. 5 checks, 1 afternoon. In 2026, they're worth more than they have been in years. If this saved you from a bill you didn't see coming, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments what your reappraisal notice actually said this spring. Those real numbers help people more than anything I can say from here. If this one hits 10,000 likes, I'll do a part 2 walking through how to appeal a Tennessee assessment step by step. I'll see you in the next.